And good morning. Welcome to the DFS Minute. Today is June 19, 2015. I'm your host, Michael Rathburn, aka Rath. Find me on Twitter at Fantasy Rath. Welcome into RotoCurve.com. Big day today in daily fantasy baseball. 15 games tonight, and we're going to kind of set the table for you today on the pitching side and talk about a strategy that I use to find value on pitchers. Basically, look at all three of the major sites that are out there: DraftKings, Fanduel, Fantasy Aces, and look for where there's opportunity on some inefficiencies in the market and give those recommendations out to you today. Talk about some of those guys. Obviously, we'll go over a couple of chalk pitchers that I definitely like, couple of value pitchers that I like, and talk about some housekeeping stuff. And let's get started. First off with Fantasy Score, our promotion over there, our head-to-head challenge, our bracket challenge at RotoCurve.com. Big night last night with a bunch of guys playing. I went up against our user Seth. Him and I actually had an exact tie with several different players the other night, an exact tie score. And so we played again last night. We were going to do like a 2-day cumulative, and I did eke out a win against Seth. So I move on tonight, and not sure who I play yet, but we'll take a look at that. So a lot of fun playing over at Fantasy Score. And one of the wrinkles that, as you play on a new site, you start to poke around, you look at stuff, and one of the things that I think is extremely cool, especially on mobile, which is where I kind of found this feature. If you go into live scoring on Fantasy Score, they actually have the little boxes of they have a live MLB scoreboard, which is very cool. Then and they give you the bases, so you know who's on base, you know what the score is, you know how many outs, etc. So it's really cool. So I don't have to go to a second screen. I can stay on that screen and track what's going on in MLB all on that one screen. So I'm loving Fantasy Score's live MLB scoreboard inside the live scoring for daily fantasy. It's awesome. I mean, I'm not even just saying that because we're a partner with them. I'm telling you right now, when I found that on the mobile last night, I was basically locked in on fantasyscore.com for about 3 hours, going back and forth from roto.com and Fantasy Score live scoring. So the wrinkle that I think is awesome is if you click on the box of the game, it's a pop-up. The pop-up is the exact box score of the game at that current time. And I'm not just talking about runs, hits, errors. I'm talking about the lineup. So you get the actual lineup with the actual box score of everything that this guy's done up until that point. So I can see what every single one of the players has done in that particular lineup, how many walks, how many hits, pitchers given up, etc. So very cool feature, and I'm excited to continue to use that feature. But for me, I don't know of any other daily fantasy site that has that feature, and I don't know if it's a relationship with USA Today, and that's why they're able to get it in. But man, it is really cool stuff. So anyway, we do have a free roll on Fantasy Score tonight. It's a $200 free roll for RotoCurve members, so definitely check that out. Make sure you sign up through our links, and if you deposit, it is an instant deposit bonus up to 50%. So it is 50%. So if you deposit $20, which is the minimum on Fantasy Score, they're going to give you an instant $10 bonus, so which is 50% of your initial deposit. So you immediately get that money to play with, no drip, no 3%, no 4%. That money is cash in play immediately. So very cool stuff over at Fantasy Score. Check it out. Join the free roll tonight. They usually run a $5 GPP every night, and they run a $5 50-50 along with other contests. So definitely look for them to beef up the amount of contests that they have. So for right now, get in the contest that you can play in and have some fun over at Fantasy Score. 2-pitcher site, FanDuel scoring, no outs, great salaries because you can find value at the hitting positions, which allow you to load up on bats, which is great. I love being able to fit in guys like Stanton, Bryce, and Goldie, and then I drop down and I play guys like Schwarber, Parmelee, Jeff Baker, so I can mix and match as stars and scrubs. But it's not a real scrub because I'm getting guys at cheap prices and good matchups, and I'm able to get my pitchers in too. I don't feel like the pricing's soft. I feel like it's just more dynamic. And because you got the wide ranges, if I want to drop down and pay for value bats, I can get guys that actually offer some value. You got to dig a little bit, but there is some good value on those bats on Fantasy Score. So definitely something that I like to do. and play over there. So like I said, lots of good reasons, and they do have late swap. So, that's another cool feature over at Fantasy Score. Last night, we did our State of the DFS show, our second edition. Went very well, got some positive feedback from guys in the industry with Dustin Goker, Jason Zernicki, and myself. So definitely check that out as we have it posted in the on the RotoCurve site as under the TV under State of DFS. So definitely exciting stuff, a lot going on in daily fantasy sports. And we're the ones, a lot of times, we are the ones that are breaking the news or giving you the analysis and the insight on the news from guys who are inside the industry who have worked for sites. That's something that no one else can claim. We have guys that have worked for sites on the operations side who have been consultants for daily fantasy sports sites, who have ran operations, who have done marketing, and who have been on the affiliate side. And also guys like Dustin who know from a legal perspective. So, in my opinion, we're definitely bringing the best industry insight that you're going to find in daily fantasy sports of anybody out there. So definitely check that out. I posted it yesterday over in the forum. Elias Research is doing a survey on DFS, and it's very good. It's only going to take about 10 minutes, if that. But definitely check it out and participate. There's some very targeted questions. And I think if you look at the survey, you're definitely going to see that these results are going to shape the landscape of daily fantasy sports moving forward. There's some very strong information questions in there that they're asking, very direct questions that they're asking that are going to shape content and contest sites both. So very cool about that. Looking forward to getting up to New York Monday afternoon for the FSTA event, Fantasy Sports Trade Association. The RotoCurve team will be there, so we look forward to meeting everybody and getting out of that. So we'll be up there early Monday, be there Tuesday, come back on Wednesday morning. So nothing on the line moves. Talk about Vegas line moves. Nothing really so far this morning. As we go out the day, we'll definitely keep track of it. But, there has been some significant edges that we've been able to find in line moves this week, and you've been able to cash in on those. There's two games where there are no lines, AJ Burnett and Joe Ross. There's no line posted for that yet. Got to think that it's going to be kind of a close money line in that situation and probably a low run total. If I had to guess, I'd say, maybe it's going to be about 110, 120 on the Washington side, and then maybe it's going to be probably a 7-run total. That would be my guess. And then DeGrom and Wixler, the Mets and the Braves. Again, I think that's going to be I'm not quite sure I think DeGrom's going to be favored here, but in Major League Baseball, it's really hard to get a dog favored on the road. So it's really hard to get those road favorites unless it's an ace pitcher. So I think DeGrom is probably going to be a slight favorite with a very low run total. Again, this actually could be a 6.5 or a 7, but I think both of these games are probably going to be very similar in that they're going to have close money lines and low run totals. Talk about chalk pitchers of the day. For me, two guys that absolutely stand out is Sonny Gray and Chris Sale. There's a lot of other guys in that mid-tier. You got Shields, you got DeGrom, you got Burnett. But for me, it's pay up for Sale, pay up for Gray. And then when we talk about value, I think there's two guys that really stick out here. And we'll talk about pricing on the sites in just a minute. But the two guys that stick out for me in a vacuum are Lance McCullers, who's favored on the road at Seattle against Ronis Elias. He's a minus 115 favorite with a 7-run total. And then we get Ruby De La Rosa at home against the Padres, heavy right-handed lineup. He's minus 110. He is going against Shields. That total was actually 8.5 and has dropped to 8. So if we talk about line moves, it's 8.5 to me is very high. And, you got Shields on the other side. You got Ruby, who's very good against right-handed bats and very good at home so far. Now, he is boom or bust, but he's been better lately. And I think that run total is just very inflated. So, it wouldn't shock me if that run total comes down to 7.5 by game time tonight. I think that there's just something off with that run total. Seems very inflated. But here's the thing about Ruby De La Rosa is he is at 6K over on DraftKings today. Now, what I look for is I look at pricing on Fanduel, DraftKings, and Fantasy Aces, and I look to see where the guy is priced the cheapest, and then I take into consideration the scoring. Obviously, we know FanDuel, the win is more important. Now, he's 7K on Fanduel, and he's only 6K on DraftKings. Now, one of the things I've been telling you lately is that on DraftKings, the top tier pitching is more expensive. The lower to mid, low, kind of that bottom 10 guys are more affordable on DraftKings, which is better because it's a two-pitcher site. So you can afford to take risks on those mid-tier guys and pay up for a guy like Sale and Gray and mix in with a guy like Ruby or with a guy like Lance McCullers or even a guy like Tyler Lyons, who is another guy that I'll talk about. But I like being able to roll out like Gray and De La Rosa or Sale and De La Rosa on DraftKings because the price is just ridiculous. Now, he's actually very cheap also on Fantasy Aces. He's 5.75 over on Fantasy Aces. So, again, I do like Ruby. I don't necessarily love him on FanDuel at 7K on a single pitcher site. The blow up factor for me is just too much. But on a two pitcher site where I think his price is just too low, that's a position that you can be. Now let's flip over to Lance McCullers. Now McCullers is a little bit of the opposite. He's only 6.7 on FanDuel, so he's absolutely in play on FanDuel. He's 8K on DraftKings, so he comes out of play for me mostly on DraftKings, and he's only 5.25 on Fantasy Aces. So I definitely like McCullers more on FanDuel and Fantasy Aces. Get him in a good spot. Again, these are the two value pitchers I think represent the best value on the board today. There's a couple other guys if you want to really drop down. Mike Bolsinger is minus 150 at home against the Giants with a 7-run total. But as we always say, we don't like picking on the Giants with right-handed pitching. So for me, Bolsinger's cheap. He's a heavy favorite, but I just don't like the spot going against Chris Heston. So Bolsinger's a guy that I'm not going to look at. Marco Estrada is very cheap on Fantasy Aces. He's only 4.7. He is a 140 favorite with a 9.5 run total. So Estrada for me is somebody who you've really got to pair it with a Sale or with a Gray and hope that nobody owns him tonight on Fantasy Aces. But for me, he's only in play on Fantasy Aces, and even then, you're talking about large field tournament, qualifier, live event, etc., where you feel like no one's going to be on Estrada, and that extra $3,000 that you're going to save, you can spread around to some big bats. Because when you go from a 4K bat to a 5K bat on Fantasy Aces, it's significant. You're talking about pretty much a cheap bat versus a stud bat. That's the difference. So with a guy like Estrada, you can get 3 stud bats in your lineup and just hope that he doesn't get blown up. And then that's where you're hoping to hit the nuts, hoping to hit a stack, mini stack, etc. over on Aces. AJ Burnett is in an interesting spot for me. He is only 8.7 on DraftKings. He's 9.2 on FanDuel. So I love Burnett. He always goes deep into games. The Pirates pitching and the Pirates lineup Pirates in general right now are extremely hot, and they're not giving up runs. So Burnett in this spot, even though it is on the road, it's a situation where I do feel like Burnett in the tournament is going to have some upside on DraftKings at 8.7. Another guy to look at on DraftKings, just talking about from a pricing standpoint only. I'm not saying he's a strong play, but look at Adam Warren at 5.1. He's actually rock bottom in this spot tonight. He's 6.7 over on FanDuel, 5.1 on Aces. So somebody to warrant consideration on DraftKings in a tournament. Again, if you're rolling with a guy like Sale or Gray and you throw in a guy, if you got 5 lineups going and you're mixing and matching Gray as your number one, throw in a McCullers, throw in a Warren, throw in an Estrada, throw in a Ruby as your second pitcher. And what you're hoping for is low ownership on those guys and 1 or 2 of them hits, and that's going to bring you to the top of a tournament. That's how you play multi-entry with a 2-pitcher site. The only other guy I think you can really look at is Tyler Lyons, who's a pretty heavy favorite, 165 against the Phillies. Its run total is 8. Now he's 6.7 on FanDuel. I don't know if I feel comfortable with him over there. He did have a pretty good game last time out. He's 6.8 on DraftKings, but here's the thing: he's 5.0 on Fantasy Aces. So he's almost bare minimum salary over on Fantasy Aces. So I definitely like him there. Again, if you're running multiple lineups in that live final qualifier tonight, I think you want to go with the studs, which is, Sale or Gray, and then you want to rotate in those second pitchers as your value guys, and then hope that 1 or 2 of them hits, and then that's going to be the one that, brings you the seat home tonight. Let's talk about some pitchers that are not listed on site. Some guys are listed, some aren't. We got 3 guys. We got Pino, we got Filippo Mont, and then we have Matt Whistler. Now, Pino, we know, has been around. So, you know, nothing really special there. He's listed on Fanduel at 5.2. He's on Aces at 4.5, not listed on DraftKings. Filippo Mont, 4.9 on Fanduel, 4.0 on DraftKings, not listed on Fantasy Aces. Amont is a guy that I'd be surprised if he makes it out of the 3rd or the 4th inning. He was initially a big-time prospect with the Mariners. He was a first-round pick out of Canada. He's a big guy, but he's a reliever. He's mostly a 7th or an 8th inning guy at best that can really only go 1 or 2 innings. So, you know, from that perspective, that's why Lions is a heavy favorite tonight. So this game could get into the bullpen, and I'm sure the Cardinals are going to be, you know, a pretty heavy stack against Amont. Whistler is a top prospect that the Braves got, I believe, in the Kimbrel trade. Good arm, big prospect. He is not listed on FanDuel, and he's not listed on Fantasy Aces. He's 6.1 on DraftKings. So for me, just too high priced over there. You know, when I look at Ruby De La Rosa at 6.0 and I look at Matt Whistler at 6.1, it's a real easy buying opportunity on De La Rosa. So Whistler's a guy that, you know, big prospect, but not listed, only on DraftKings. So just be aware of those are some of the pitchers that are out there on the board tonight. Come back and join us at 12 noon Eastern with the Curve, with Benny and Josh hitting you up with all the analysis for today. And then we'll hit you back later on today between 6 and 6:30 with the DFS Minute. Once most of the lineups come out, we get weather from Danielle around 5:30. So we'll play that out. We'll see what lineups come out. We'll see where there's value, where we can take opportunity tonight. As we say here at RotoCurve, stay classy, DFS.